You remember the moment. Maybe it was 2 a.m. and the conversation had gone somewhere neither of you planned. Maybe it was something small, a look that lasted a second too long, a detail they remembered that you'd only mentioned once, months ago. Maybe it was the way they went quiet after something real passed between you. Not cold, not checked out. Quiet in the way people get when something has genuinely moved them, and they don't yet have words for it. And in that moment, you knew, not hoped, knew, this isn't habit. This isn't loneliness. This person actually sees me. And then they disappeared. So now you're replaying it, wondering if you imagined the depth, if what felt like real connection was just a slip, something they regretted the second they realized how much they'd revealed, wondering if they're even capable of loving something real, or they only ever wanted the version of you that made them feel less alone. Here's what nobody tells you. The disappearance isn't the proof that it wasn't real. It's the proof that it was. So here's the question worth sitting with. If avoidants struggle to connect emotionally, why do the moments of deepest connection seem to terrify them more than the shallow ones ever did? Most people get this wrong. When an avoidant pulls away after a moment of genuine depth, the instinct is to assume the moment wasn't real, that the vulnerability was accidental, a slip they immediately regretted. So you try to recreate it. More meaningful conversations, more intentional intimacy, more careful, deliberate effort to get back to that place. But here's the problem. Recreating the conditions doesn't recreate the moment, because the moment wasn't about the conditions. It was about the absence of pressure. And now that you're trying to engineer it, pressure is all they feel. The very thing you're reaching for becomes unreachable the moment you start reaching. Avoidants don't run from people they feel nothing for. They run from people they feel everything for, and don't yet know how to hold it. Before we go further, there's a specific mistake people make the moment they sense this kind of love is real. A way of responding that doesn't just fail. It convinces the avoidant that closeness with you isn't something they can survive. We'll get to exactly what that is. But first, you need to understand where the real proof lives. It's not in how often they reach out. It's not in grand gestures or clean declarations. It's in the moments they couldn't help themselves. The conversation that ran 3 hours when they planned to leave after 1. The specific detail, small, almost throwaway, that they brought back up weeks later, proving they held on to it. The way they went still after something true passed between you. Not dismissive. Still, the way they looked at you before they caught themselves looking. Attention-seeking doesn't remember the small things. Habit doesn't go quiet after being genuinely moved. Research from the University of Virginia found that avoidantly attached individuals do experience deep emotional attunement. They simply route their response inward rather than outward. The feeling registers. The connection lands. But the expression gets suppressed, rerouted, delayed, because vulnerability to their nervous system isn't a bridge. It's an exposure. And exposure, historically, has not been safe. So the proof isn't in what they showed you openly. It's in what they couldn't fully hide, and then quietly panicked about afterward. Here's the paradox that changes everything. A shallow relationship is manageable for an avoidant. It doesn't ask for much. It doesn't reveal much. It doesn't cost much if it ends. But a connection that reaches something real, something beneath the surface they show most people, that connection has stakes. If that person leaves, they don't just lose a relationship. They lose a witness. Someone who saw them in a way most people never do or will. And the only way to protect against that loss is to leave first, or keep just enough distance that the connection never fully lands. What looks like indifference after a deep moment is almost always fear wearing indifference as a costume. So when they went cold after the 2 a.m. conversation, that wasn't them deciding it wasn't real. That was them registering that it was. Their system doesn't know how to metabolize that level of closeness without also bracing for the moment it gets taken away. So they create distance themselves, on their terms, before it can happen to them. Soul-level love, to an avoidant, is the most threatening thing they've ever felt. But here's what most people miss entirely. They didn't open up because you were patient enough, or strategic enough, or perfectly available. They open up because at some specific moment, you were fully yourself, and that self didn't flinch when they tested it, didn't collapse when they withdrew, didn't perform for them or need them to be different. You just existed, completely, steadily, and something in them recognized it as safe. Not comfortable, safe. Those aren't the same thing. Comfort is familiar. Safety is rare. And what an avoidant protects most fiercely is exactly what they'll risk the most keep once they believe the risk is survivable. That version of you is the one that proved the risk was worth taking. Now, the trap. The moment most people sense this depth is real, they move toward the avoidant. Warmth, urgency, reassurance. Try and hold the door open before it closes. Try and keep the intimacy alive before it cools. It makes complete sense. It's also exactly the wrong move, because the moment you do that, their nervous system reads it as confirmation of their deepest fear. Closeness leads to need leads to pressure, and pressure leads to the very loss they were already bracing for. The version of you that first cracked them open wasn't urgent, wasn't chasing, wasn't trying to lock down what it felt. It was present without pressure. And that's the version they need to see again. Not as a strategy, not as a performance of calm, but because that version was always the real one. What they're doing right now, beneath the silence and the distance, is deciding, not whether they feel it. They already feel it. They're deciding whether they can survive feeling it, whether the connection that reached something real in them is still safe to return to, whether you're still the person who existed fully, without needing them to be anything other than what they are. That's a very different kind of question than whether the love is real, and it deserves a very different kind of answer than chasing them. The answer is staying grounded in yourself, continuing to become who you were in that moment. Not because it will pull them back, but because that version of you is who you actually are. The steadiness isn't a tactic. It's the truth of you, and it's the only thing that was ever going to reach them. Holding that space is quiet, unglamorous work, and it can feel profoundly lonely, especially when the person you're holding has first gone silent, and the silence offers nothing to interpret, nothing to act on, nothing to fix. Most people in that silence turn inward in the worst way. They start editing themselves, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened, auditing every interaction for what they did wrong. And that spiral doesn't just hurt. It quietly dismantles the very version of you that made the connection real in the first place. That's exactly why this community exists. Not to give you a strategy for getting them back. Not to hand you scripts or tactics or the perfect thing to say after a week of no contact. But to give you a place to come back to yourself, consistently, honestly, with people who are doing the same work in real time. People who understand what it means to love someone whose nervous system fights against the very thing their heart wants. People who won't tell you to simply move on, but who will sit with you in the complexity of staying open without losing your ground. Because the goal was never just to understand avoidant attachment. The goal is to become someone so rooted in themselves that the right connection, whether with this person or someone new, has somewhere solid to land. That community is in the description. Come find us. So look back at the moments that made you certain. The 3-hour conversations, the details they remembered, the silences that followed something true, the look before they caught themselves. Don't doubt those moments. Those were the moments their system failed to suppress what it actually felt. And what it felt, clearly, unmistakably, despite everything, was you. Not the version of you that was trying. Not the version that was available, waiting, carefully adjusting itself to earn something back. The version that simply, quietly, was. That's the soul they love. And the proof was never in the chasing. It was always in the moments. They couldn't hide it.